Hi, so this is Sarmiento and Arcilla versus Mison and Carague. Have you ever wondered who really gets to decide on government appointments? Is it the president alone, or does Congress, through the Commission on Appointments, always have the final word? So today, we'll revisit the case from 1987, which, as I've mentioned earlier, Sarmiento and Arcilla versus Mison and Carague. And it's a story about checks and balances, constitutional interpretation, and yes, even a single word that nearly changed the political game. So, what really happened in that case? Right after the 1987 Constitution took effect, President Corazon Aquino appointed Salvador Mison as Commissioner of the Bureau of Customs. Now, Customs was, and still is, one of the most powerful and sensitive agencies in government. However, during that time, two lawyers, Professors Olpiano Sarmiento III and Juanito Arcilla, filed a petition before the Supreme Court saying that the appointment was invalid. Why? Because Mison's appointment wasn't confirmed by the Commission on Appointments. In short, they argued that no confirmation, no authority. On the other side, Mison and then Budget Secretary Guillermo Carague stood firm and they said that the president doesn't need confirmation for this, that the appointment is already constitutional. And just to spice things up, the Commission on Appointments itself jumped in and filed its own petition, insisting that its power was being undermined. Hmm. So the stage is set, executive versus legislative, with the judiciary as the referee. So what are the big questions in this case? So the case boiled down to a few important issues. First, does the Commissioner of Customs really need confirmation by the Commission on Appointments? The second one is, how should Section 16 of Article 7 of the 1987 Constitution be read? And the third one and the last, what did the framers really mean by that tricky little word alone, as stated in Section 16? Now, let's break down the Constitution, shall we? Let's simplify Section 16, Article 7. So, think of it as dividing government appointments into, let's say, four baskets. The first basket is about the big positions, right? When we say big positions, these are the cabinet secretaries, the ambassadors, the consuls, the senior military officers, and other posts explicitly named in the Constitution. Do these require confirmation? Yes. With basket number two, these are other officers not otherwise provided for by law. If Congress didn't say who appoints them, the president does. The third basket, positions that the president is authorized by law to appoint. The fourth basket are lower ranked officers whose appointments Congress may, by law, assign to the president alone, the courts, or other officials. So, what should you remember with this? Only the first basket, the big positions, explicitly requires confirmation. With the other baskets, like other officers, positions authorized, lower ranked officers, they do not require confirmation. Okay? So, how did the Supreme Court reason out with regard to this? The Supreme Court applied the principle with expressio unius est exclusio alterius. Don't be intimidated. It simply means If the Constitution specifically mentions something, then whatever it doesn't mention is excluded. So, if only the first basket is listed as needing confirmation, the rest don't. But the court did not stop there. The Supreme Court also looked back at the history of the Constitution. Let's begin with the 1935 Constitution. Under the 1935 Constitution, almost every presidential appointment needed confirmation. But what was the result? Endless political bargaining, what people call horse trading. Under the 1973 Constitution, the opposite happened. Confirmation was basically scrapped, giving the president unchecked power. The 1987 Constitution now aimed for balance. The framers wanted only the highest officials, those in the first basket that I've mentioned earlier, to undergo confirmation. And, here's an interesting detail. During the debates of the 1986 Constitutional Commission, the phrase "and bureaus" was actually deleted from the list of posts requiring confirmation. Why? Because the framers thought bureau directors were too low in the hierarchy to be dragged into politics. As for the word "alone" in Section 16, the court said it was just a drafting slip, a lapsus in draftsmanship. In plain English, a leftover word from an older version that no longer fit. So, what did the Supreme Court decide? The Supreme Court ruled that the Commissioner of Customs does not need confirmation from the Commission on Appointments. The President had the authority to appoint Salvador Mison directly, and his appointment stood valid. In short, the petition was dismissed, and the court affirmed that the balance of power under the 1987 Constitution was intentional, and confirmation only for the top posts, not for everyone else.